Hey guys, I don't even know how to start this. I've been sitting here for like 20 minutes, just staring at the screen, trying to figure out where to begin. Because this story, it's not easy to tell. It's mine, it's real, and for a long time, I kept it to myself because honestly, I was ashamed. Not because I did anything wrong, but because when something that bad happens to you, sometimes you feel like maybe you deserved it somehow, like maybe you weren't enough. I'm here to tell you that's a lie. My name is Sarah. I'm 31 years old. I live in a small town in Tennessee, and 3 years ago, my mother-in-law opened the front door of her house, pointed outside into the cold November night, and told me to get out. I was 4 months pregnant, and my husband, the man who promised in front of God and everyone to love and protect me, he just stood there, didn't say a word. I want to tell you what happened after that, because that night felt like the end of everything. But it wasn't. It was actually the beginning. So let me back up. Let me tell you who I was before all of this. I grew up in a really small town, like one stoplight. Everybody knows everybody kind of small. My mom and dad were regular working people. Dad worked at an auto parts store for 20-some years. Mom did bookkeeping from home. We weren't wealthy by any stretch, but we were loved. We had a good home. My parents were the kind of people who showed up for each other and showed up for us kids. I was a quiet girl. I was the type who followed the rules, didn't make waves, always tried to keep the peace. Looking back on that now, I can see how that became a problem. But at the time, I just thought that's what a good person does. You keep your head down. You work hard. You don't cause drama. I met Tyler when I was 25. He was cute, charming, funny. He had this easy smile, and he made me feel like the most important person in the room. We dated for about a year and a half, and then he proposed, and I said yes. I was so happy, like genuinely over the moon happy. His family seemed fine at first. His mom, Linda, she was put together, like always dressed nice, hair always done, house always clean. I thought she was just one of those very particular Southern women who takes pride in everything. I thought I could handle that. I thought if I just worked hard and was respectful, she'd eventually warm up to me. Y'all, I was so wrong. The first sign came about 2 weeks after Tyler and I got married and moved into Linda's house temporarily. The plan was to save money for 6 months and then get our own place. 6 months. That was the deal. I came downstairs one morning and made a pot of coffee. Linda came into the kitchen, looked at the coffee pot and said, and I quote, "That's not how we make coffee in this house." It was coffee. I made coffee wrong. Now, any reasonable person would have laughed that off, but Linda wasn't laughing. She was dead serious. She showed me how she made coffee, the exact amount of grounds, the exact water level, the exact time, and then she looked at me and said, "We have a way of doing things here." I nodded and smiled and said okay. But something in my stomach turned. That was just the beginning. Over the next few weeks, I couldn't do anything right. My cooking was wrong. The way I folded towels was wrong. The way I organized the pantry was wrong. The way I spoke, the way I dressed, even the way I sat on the couch was apparently wrong, and the comments about my family started. Little jabs. Well, not everyone grows up knowing how to maintain a proper home. Or, "Tyler's used to a certain standard, honey," said with a smile. Always. That's the thing about Linda. She was never outright mean in a way you could clearly call out. It was always just below the surface, always deniable. Tyler would hear these things and say nothing every single time. I'd bring it up to him later, and he'd say, "That's just how she is, Sarah. She doesn't mean anything by it." And then he'd change the subject. I started to feel like I was invisible, like I was living in someone else's life. Then I found out I was pregnant. Tyler and I had talked about starting a family. We both wanted kids. So when I saw that positive test, I sat on the bathroom floor and cried happy tears, like genuinely beautiful, ugly crying happy tears. I told Tyler that night. He hugged me. He seemed happy. He kissed my forehead and said, "We're gonna be great parents, babe." That moment felt real. That moment felt like maybe everything was going to be okay. But then we told Linda. She got very quiet. She looked at me, not Tyler, just me, and she said, "Well, guess you'll need to learn how to manage a household properly before you're managing a child." That was it. No congratulations. No hug. Nothing. From that point on, things got worse. I was 4 months pregnant, and Linda had me scrubbing floors, doing laundry for the whole house, cooking 3 meals a day. Tyler worked long hours, and honestly, I think he just didn't see what was happening or didn't want to see it. I was exhausted all the time. My back hurt. My feet were swollen by the afternoon. I asked Linda once if I could maybe sit down after lunch for a little while. She looked at me like I'd asked for $1 million and said, "Pregnancy isn't a disability, Sarah." I went to the bathroom and cried for 15 minutes. Then I washed my face and went back out and kept going. Because that's what I did. I kept going. I kept the peace. But you can only keep the peace for so long before the peace keeps you. The night it all broke was a random Tuesday. I was washing dishes after dinner. I was tired. I mean bone tired, like the kind of tired that goes all the way to your soul. I accidentally knocked a bowl off the counter. It broke on the floor. It was a bowl, a regular bowl from the cabinet. Linda came around the corner and saw it, and something in her just snapped. Like that bowl was the last straw for everything she'd been holding in since the day Tyler brought me home. She started going off about how I was careless, how I didn't respect her home, how she had given us a place to stay, and this is how I repay her, how Tyler deserved better, how she always knew I wasn't right for him, how my raising was showing, and I just stood there, barefoot in the kitchen with broken pieces of bowl on the floor, 4 months pregnant, just standing there while this woman tore me apart. And then she said it. She said, "I want you out of my house. Tonight." I looked at Tyler. He was standing in the doorway. I looked right at him, right into his eyes. And he looked away. That's the part that broke me, not Linda. Linda I could almost understand in a twisted way. People like Linda have always existed, but Tyler, my husband, my partner, the father of my child, he looked away. He did not say one single word. Linda walked to the front door and opened it. I went upstairs. I put what I could fit into one bag. Some clothes, my phone charger, my prenatal vitamins, my insurance card. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely zip the bag up. I walked downstairs, past Linda, who was still holding the door open, past Tyler, who still hadn't moved, and I walked out into the cold November night. The door closed behind me. I sat in my car in the driveway for a few minutes. I couldn't breathe right. I just kept thinking, this is not real, this is not happening, this cannot be my life right now. But it was. It was my life. I drove to my parents' house. It was about 40 minutes away. I cried the whole drive. Not loud crying, just the quiet kind, where the tears just keep falling and you can't stop them. When my mom opened the door and saw me standing there with my bag in my belly, she didn't ask questions. She just pulled me inside and held me. That's the last thing I remember clearly from that night. The weeks after that were some of the darkest of my life. My parents were incredible. They made space for me. They took care of me. They never once made me feel like a burden. But I could see the worry on my dad's face. He was retired. They were on a fixed income, and now they had a pregnant daughter sleeping in the guest room with no plan. And the town talked. Oh, did they talk? Small towns are real good at that. People who barely knew me, suddenly had opinions about what happened and why. Some people assumed I must have done something to deserve it. Some people felt sorry for me in that awful pitying way that almost feels worse than judgment. I stopped going out much. I stayed home. I ate whatever my mom put in front of me. I went to my prenatal appointments. I watched a lot of TV. I tried to sleep. Tyler called a few times in the beginning, said he was sorry, said he didn't know what to say that night, said his mom was his mom and it was complicated. I listened, and then I stopped answering. At some point during those dark weeks, I was lying in bed one night and the baby kicked, like a real solid kick for the first time, and I just put both hands on my belly and I lay there in the dark and I made myself a promise. I said, out loud, in that quiet room, I am not going to let this be the end of your story or mine. That was the night I decided to get back up. My daughter was born in April. I named her Grace because that's what I needed, and that's what she gave me. When they put her in my arms, I looked at her little face, and I felt something shift inside me permanently, like a gear clicking into place that was never going to slip back out. I was her mom. She had nobody else in this world to count on but me, and I was going to make sure she had everything. So I got to work. I had always been decent at organizing and numbers. Thanks to watching my mom do bookkeeping all those years, I started offering virtual assistant services online. Basic stuff at first, scheduling, emails, spreadsheets, data entry. I charged barely anything because I had no portfolio, but I worked every single hour that Grace was sleeping. I got 1 client, then 2, then 5. I learned everything I could. I watched free tutorials. I read everything. I got better. I got faster. I got smarter about running my business and marketing myself. Grace turned 1. I had 15 regular clients, and I had moved into my own little apartment. Nothing fancy. 2 bedrooms, old carpet, neighbors who played music too loud, but it was mine. My name on the lease, my rules, my space. Grace turned 2. I hired my first part-time helper. I was making more money than Tyler had ever made. I was building something real, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. I felt like myself again. About a month before Grace turned 3, I got a call from a cousin of Tyler's who I'd always gotten along with. She kind of danced around things for a minute and then finally told me what was going on. Linda's health wasn't great. The woman Tyler had lined up to maybe marry after me had left within a year. Apparently, Linda had driven her off too. Big surprise. Tyler had lost his job and was struggling. The house that I got kicked out of was now a stressed out, financially strained, pretty unhappy place, and Linda apparently had been asking about me. A few days later, Tyler called. He'd heard I was doing well. He sounded genuinely stunned by that. Like somewhere in the back of his mind, he'd assumed I'd fallen apart. He apologized. He said a lot of things. He cried a little. He asked if there was any chance at all. I listened to the whole thing. I let him finish, and then I told him I was actually hosting a small open house for my business the following week, a little celebration for hitting a major milestone, and I told him he was welcome to come. Linda too, if she wanted, and the family, all of them. He seemed confused, but he said, okay. They showed up. Tyler, Linda, a couple of aunts and cousins. I was standing at the front of the room in a dress I'd bought with my own money, Grace running around in her little shoes, my assistant managing the sign-in table, everything organized and professional and mine. I watched Linda walk in and look around. I watched her take in the room, the setup, the other guests, my employees, the framed logo on the wall. She didn't say anything for a long time. Later in the evening, she found me near the refreshments table. She looked older, smaller somehow, like she'd shrunk a little since that night 3 years ago. She said, You did all of this yourself? I said, Yes, ma'am, all of it. She was quiet for a second, and then she said, I wasn't fair to you. That was it. No big dramatic speech. No list of apologies. Just those 5 words. I nodded. I said, No, you weren't. And that was enough. That was everything. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything in her face. I didn't need to, because the life I had built around me in that room said more than any speech ever could. Tyler found me before they left. He said he was proud of me. He said it quietly, kind of embarrassed. I told him I hoped things got easier for him, and I meant it. I genuinely meant it. But I also told him that the door that Linda closed 3 years ago had been a gift, because it pushed me through a door I never would have walked through on my own. I'm telling you this today because somebody out there needs to hear it. Maybe you're in a situation right now where someone has decided you don't belong. Maybe someone with more power than you has looked at you and said, You're not enough for this. Get out. I want you to hear me when I say this. They are wrong. Not kind of wrong, not a little bit wrong, completely, totally wrong. Your worst night is not your whole story. The door that closes on you is not the last door in the world. Sometimes the people who hurt us most are doing it because they are terrified of something they see in us that they don't have in themselves. Grace is 3 now. She is the funniest, bossiest, most bright-eyed little girl I've ever seen in my life. She has no idea what her first months of life looked like. She just knows she is loved. She knows she is safe. She knows her mama built something. And one day, when she's old enough, I'm going to tell her this whole story, not to make her angry at anyone, but to show her that strength isn't something you're born with. It's something you build in the dark, one day at a time, when nobody's watching and nobody's clapping for you. That's the real story. That's always been the real story. Thanks for being here, y'all. Seriously, it means more than you know.